welcome to the second episode of the Authentic Audience podcast. Today on this episode, I am in the Bahamas and I am joined by the CEO and founder of Ritual Hot Yoga. Her name is Lindsey Kaalberg. But before I get into introducing Lindsey, I just wanted to start by saying thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, who listened to the first episode. I'm actually blown away by how many people listened to that episode. And it's so exciting to know that it's resonating with people. It's inspiring people. It's all I really want to do is help us all grow together in business, in life, all of the things. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm really excited about this new endeavor. I really enjoyed recording last week's episode, but because I love people and I'm obsessed with communicating, I think I'm going to enjoy having a guest even more. Today, I am joined by Lindsey Kaalberg, CEO and founder of Ritual Hot Yoga and inventor of Mat Snaps. Ritual Hot Yoga is a luxury, all-inclusive yoga studio with locations in San Francisco, Chicago, and more on the way. Lindsey is one of my biggest inspirations in business and in life and has become one of my closest friends. Today, we're going to be diving into how she created Ritual Hot Yoga, plans for the future, maintaining a brand and culture during extreme growth, moments of inauthenticity, and how we separate our friendship from our working relationship. Lindsey is revolutionizing the yoga industry. Her teachers are full-time employees with paid benefits and vacation. The ritual experience itself is unlike any other, which, if you have not experienced it and are in San Francisco or Chicago, we're going to be offering you all a complimentary class so you can try it for yourself. But of course, we'll be talking more about the ritual experience and what makes it so unique. Today, we are actually in the Bahamas at the Ritual Hot Yoga Retreat, so bear with us. We've learned the past few days the power could go out at any second, so we will do our best to go with the flow. Welcome to the podcast, Lindsey.
Wow, thank you.
How do you feel to be my first guest?
I am honored, exceptionally honored.
I was thinking that it's kind of funny because Ritual was like one of our first clients.
Oh, I like that. Romantic.
Very romantic. So I just wanted to maybe start by talking about, before we dive into Ritual, how we met and that story. Our love at first. Do you remember that?
I remember a couple times of our first meetings, but one in yoga class?
No. Okay. Oh. That was the first time I experienced Lindsey, which is a whole other thing. But I was thinking of that conversation we had in your office.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That was the first time I think we really got to connect alone. We didn't have our one-on-one date if we were comparing it to The Bachelor,
which we've been watching here in the Bahamas.
Yeah. But that was definitely an interesting moment for me. It was really special. Krista came into the front office and we were sitting there just connecting about Ritual and the brand. And what lit me up the most was, and I've told you this before, but that 20 years of my brain and my emotion and my passion and all of these things boiled down to what Ritual was and what I wanted it to be. And Krista was able to just encompass it all in a conversation and pull everything out of me that I loved the most for the brand and put it into this unique special package and just deliver it back to me. And I'm like, oh my God, you get it. And it was the first time I had that experience where I was like, oh my God, like, yes, like that's what I'm trying to say. So it was cool.
I love that. And at this time I was actually working for you full time. So this was before Authentic Audience began, which we can talk about how that transition happened. But I was brought on to teach and to run the brand. And this was kind of our first opportunity to really connect. And I just remember like seeing you in that conversation. Like it was like this, I get it. I understand what you're saying. Here's how I think we can help other people understand what you're saying. So I think that's a big part of what I do too, is I like listen to you. I get it. And then let's try and make it so everyone else can get it too. And I think that's what we've done a pretty good job of.
Yeah. Well, and it was in that conversation too, you were able to pull out where we were operating within that space and where we were not operating within that space, which was really helpful to see, because I could feel it. Right. I could feel there was something off, but to be able to distinguish where it was off and where it was on was really cool.
And of course you have to be receptive to that, which is a whole nother thing that I find. And one thing I love about working with you is like, hey, Linz, this isn't working. Okay, great. What do we do about it? And then the other thing I love about working with you is, which is equally challenging and frustrating at times, is how true you are to the brand. And so if Clay and I have an idea or something we want to try with marketing, and Lindsey will just say, nope, like we're not doing it because that's not on brand for us. There are certain marketing strategies that we come up with, and Ritual being a luxury brand and Lindsey wanting to stay true to that brand, we oftentimes have to get creative.
Less shortcuts.
Less shortcuts. So before we get too carried away with this, I wanted to just back up and have you tell us a little bit more about your experience and how Ritual kind of came to be. I got a lot of questions asking about your background and if you studied business, and just sort of, I would like you to start with Mat Snaps, actually. Tell us what they are, how that came about, and then we can kind of get into Ritual.
Yeah. Well, they do kind of weave together, but yeah. So let's see. Growing up, I feel like I always had the leadership quality. Growing up, maybe you would call it bossy, but I always had that innate desire to lead and really to be like in charge and create something. And so when I went to college, I went to school for business management and took my first yoga class my freshman year, and was lying in my first final shavasana. Had a very cliche moment, like, perfect, this is it. This is what I'm going to do with my life. It was like a 90-minute orgasm. And I was like, if I could do this every day and bring this to people every day, like the world would be such a better place. So started teaching yoga the next year at this mom and pop studio, Hot House Yoga in Iowa City. It's fantastic. And while I was there teaching, I love to kick people's asses when I teach. Like,
yes, she does.
Absolutely love it. And one of my favorite things, even when I first started, is to hold people in postures instead of offering breaks, challenge them, encourage them to stay where they are. And I would notice, especially in forearm plank and in high plank, people would stop their practice to quote unquote fix their towel. And I was like, excuse you, like you do not need to be fixing your towel right now. And so I was getting so frustrated and annoyed. I'm like, okay, I got to get my class to stay in forearm plank. They're pretending like they need to fix their towel. I'm going to snap their damn towel down to their mat. So I remember literally I went to like Joann's Fabrics and I bought snaps. And I remember getting like a hammer and I hammered in little snaps on the corner of my towel and my mat. And that's how I literally created the first iteration of Mat Snaps. This freshman year in college. And I put them through the wash and everything. Long story short, obviously that first model didn't work so well.
That's so funny that's how Mat
Yeah.
Because you didn't want people to move. Because it's really, if you don't know what Mat Snaps are, I will just back up for a second. So Mat Snaps are this invention that Lindsey created, and it's actually not a snap. It's like a clip. And you clip them down on all four corners of your mat, and we use them at Ritual when you're getting your towel, especially with hot yoga, to stay on your mat. And so at Ritual, every mat has them, and we also sell them. People love it. It's great. I love it. Yeah. Like I didn't even know that's why. That's so funny. So that was like your first sort of.
Yeah, it was because, I think in the yoga industry, not to go on one of my rants, but in the yoga industry, it seems like a lot of times we stop evolving. Everyone is struggling to make ends meet in the yoga industry, whether you have a yoga studio or you are a yoga brand creating yoga clothing or, something of that nature. And so I think when people are just trying to make it, there's not a lot of evolvement. But when I was young and had the freedom and the brain space to just create, I was like, well, give me a hammer and I'm going to hammer this snap down and make the towel stay put. Then finally, I wrote a paper on it in college for my entrepreneurship class. My teacher told me it was going to be an aftermarket doodad and gave me like a B on the project.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And then, kind of took it from there. It was a long journey, but
I love that. So now here we are. It's 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to paint a picture for people before we get into the employee, the business side of Ritual. I want to talk about the customer experience and sort of paint a picture of what the Ritual experience actually is. So Ritual, when you come in, you can actually smell the incense. That's kind of my favorite part. Ritual sort of takes you into this other world, and it starts with the smell, and you can smell it before you even enter the studio. So you go in, it's all inclusive, so you don't need to bring anything at all. You go into Ritual, and you walk through this dark little hallway, candlelit hallway. You grab a towel for your mat, you fill up your water bottle, face towel, blocks, everything sort of lined up, ready to go. There's little essential oils that you can try and put on your mat, put on your face, wherever. And then you walk down the hallway into a candlelit room, heated candlelit room, otherwise dark. The mats are already lined up for you with the mat snaps. So you basically come in. This is how the ritual begins from the minute you walk into the door. You come in, you sit down, you snap your mat down, and class begins. And every class is a 50-minute flow. And the sequence will change, but the flow or the structure of the class stays the same. So it hits on everything. We have intentions, which is actually probably my favorite part of the experience. Whichever studio you're in, whichever teacher you take, the intention is the same that entire week. So every teacher teaches the same intention. They go through the yamas, niyamas, chakras, yoga philosophy. So you get all these different iterations on the same intention and really get to dive deep. Also, same thing with the peak posture. So every week she works us into a different peak posture, and every teacher is teaching that same posture, different sequencing, different ways of getting in. There's core, there's flows, there's balancing, there's a beautiful shavasana that ends with cold eucalyptus towels and massages. And from beginning to end of the class, you're breathing and moving with the beat of the music. So you really get lost. It's really hot, it's really dark, it's really fast. You kind of end class like, I don't know what just happened, but I loved it. That was my first experience anyway. Then there's showers, towels, amenities, all of the things. So you can really come in 50 minutes, only bring yourself, and end with this sort of like transformative, powerful, just seeing the transformation that students have gone through on the teacher end, and also just being a member there now is like kind of pretty phenomenal. So my question to you is, how the fuck did you come up with this?
So there's multiple facets, I would say, to the experience, and it is all intentional. Everything has been thought through. But so the first part for the sequencing, which I think is a really key part of it, was I can't tell you how many teacher trainings I had done. It wasn't a Bikram training, but pretty much a Bikram training, vinyasa training, a yin training, a lifting weights while you do yoga training. And I was so frustrated. I'm like, I have to go to 6 different yoga classes every single week to get the full physical experience I was searching for. And then the classes, I would be there and I wouldn't get like true philosophy. I wouldn't get true meditation. I wouldn't get true breath work. And I was like, okay, this is so frustrating. So what I did is I'm like, well, screw it. I'm going to put them all. I was almost going to fuck it, but I don't know.
We can say fuck.
Okay, great.
It's me.
Okay. I was like, fuck it. I'm going to put it all in one class. I'm like, that is going to be a hot mess. Let's try it. So every single part of class is inspired by a different yoga teaching style that I love. And then it was a hot mess. So I was like, now what do we do? I was at a soul cycle class one day. And when I was there, I noticed how people seemed to be getting lost in a spin class. And I was like, this is wild. What's happening? My perception of what's happening in a soul cycle class that makes it so addictive is, among other things, that people are in a flow state and they're achieving that flow state, that level of presence, because you have to be on beat the entire time. And when I was in there, I was like, okay, what could we do that was to the beat the entire class? I was like, well, gosh, we can't really move to the beat because I knew I wanted static postures. I was like, the only thing you do the entire class is breathe. And I have this vivid memory of being on the bike, holding on and thinking like, holy shit, we could breathe to the beat. That was really the icing on the cake where I was like, we're going to breathe to the beat of the music. And that's how it started.
I mean, it really, I can't explain it. Like when I take a ritual class, like from the minute you sit down, like even the opening meditation is cued. So like every breath, the entire class is cued. For somebody like me with a super anxious mind, I'm not thinking about anything else. Like all you have to do is focus on your breath. Everything and then the rest of the class, you hit on every sense.
Yes. Yeah, that's another part. I wanted, this kind of stems from my love for tantric yoga. And the idea of a ritual is truly to have every single part of the experience be curated for exceptionalism. And a way to do that is through sensuality, and not just speaking like in a sexual way, which if you want to interpret it that way, that's fine. But, everything from the way the studio looks, like I am so particular. Mats need to be in a perfect line. Mm-hmm. The towels need to be folded perfectly. The smell of the incense, it should smell the same at every studio. You should know where you are when you walk in. Cool water. How does it feel when you literally take that sip of water in class, which hopefully you're not doing during a challenging pose?
Or Lindsey will call you out.
Yes. But, the water should be cool. The touch from the assistants is huge. We have an assistant in every class.
Oh, right. I forgot to add that part. So every ritual class, there's 2 teachers in every room, one teacher giving the cues and another teacher just offering physical adjustments, assists, deepening, loving, touch. The entire class.
Yeah. And that's so important. Some people aren't touched. Some people can go through the entire day without having physical connection with another human being. And especially with how technologically focused we are these days, when you can have that physical connection with someone and it's like you feel their release of their energy, it's such a cool part of the experience. And then what you hear, the music and the bass, you can feel it pulsing through your body. And even when we deliver the intention drops, that is curated. So you hear what you're supposed to hear based on what's going on in your body. And we drop more vulnerable parts in the hips, and we coach and we create space, because so many times I've been to yoga classes, and this is not from a place of negativity, I should say, but so many times I've been to classes and the teacher feels like they are just saying like, and now let everything go and just be. And I don't sometimes believe them. It's that feeling. And coming from the other end, I empathize with them where I'm like, you're probably just fucking tired, exhausted. This is probably the 20th class you've taught this week. And you're just dropping lines that you've heard before. And you don't feel the passion behind it and the authenticity behind it. So with our intentions, we're really particular about when you're going to speak, when you are going to bring this philosophy into class, make sure it's intentional.
I love how passionate you get about talking about this. It's just so cool because I've seen it come so far. And I think this is a great sort of opportunity to transition into the teachers. I heard you say, this was your 20th class, you were exhausted. And I know that you had a really interesting sort of journey into the business model. So now you know what the ritual experience is, how intentional it is, and why it was created the way that it was. But to me, the actual real inspiration and holy shit, like power behind the Ritual brand is the business model and the teaching side. So I want to take a quick break and then we'll talk about how you have managed to scale this business this way and how you manage to pay all of your teachers full time, full salary, all the things. You had this idea, and in addition to the actual class model, you had this sort of idea for a teacher model. And how did you even, like, how did this come about?
So as I said, before, I taught in college and I loved it. Part-time job, wasn't reliant on my money, coming in. Right after college, I still knew I wanted a yoga studio, was curious about, because I really love business. And so I wanted to work for a yoga studio that had a bunch of studios that had scaled. So I moved to Chicago and I worked for a big yoga studio chain. And I got there so naive and just like went in like, okay, I've got, 300 hours of teacher training. I've been teaching for, a little over 3 years now. Can I audition? I want a job. And they're like, yeah, you need to do our teacher training first. I'm like, great. Okay. What teacher trainings are there? And they showed me this list of teacher trainings and wow, they were all so expensive. I'm like, oh, okay. So I picked the cheapest one they had, which was a yoga sculpt training. So I did that teacher training and got done with the training. And they're like, okay, great. Now it's time for your internship. And I was like, okay, what's an internship? They're like, well, you're going to teach 30 classes unpaid. Finally, got spots on the schedule. Once I did, quickly realized at that time they were still paying per class, quickly realized that it was, obviously below minimum wage if you were going to factor in the hours. You weren't paid to create classes, all these things. And it wasn't really, at that point, that big of a deal to me. Everybody else was doing it. I figured there must be some secret once you get deeper, into it. And I remember getting to see the behind the scenes, and to be like, just totally honest, like one of the things that they told me when we were looking for people, I'm like, this job isn't sustainable. Like we have no salary, no guaranteed, no sick time, no benefits, like no 401ks, obviously. Like those were all, it was just a joke. They looked at me like I was, just so incredibly, again, naive for thinking this would even be possible.
Yeah. It's one of my biggest, actually, just to cut in, like, I work with a lot of yogis and a lot of yoga teachers. And like when you become a yoga teacher, you're basically like dedicating your life to like serving other people. And when you're not taking care of yourself, like I have so many clients and friends that are like running around, like they spend like 10 hours a week in the car, just driving from studio to studio. And it's exhausting. But I never thought, oh, there could be another way. So how did that like, when did that moment happen?
It was, I had a breakdown. So I remember I got really, really sick. And I just called my mom and I just lost it. Just had a breakdown. And I was like, look, like mom, like, I don't know what's happening. Yoga ruined my life. The way they treat teachers is so disrespectful and so inauthentic and so not in alignment with the yoga culture that I thought I was getting myself into. And she's just a badass. And she's just like, okay, well, you have a day to be sad and then figure it out. So I had my day of sulking, feeling like a victim, realized that was useless. So decided, fuck it. I'm going to start my own yoga studio, which I already wanted to do. And it's going to be different. They're going to be full-time salaried employees. They will have sick time. They will have benefits. They're going to have, a 401k, like these things that just seem so run of the mill in any other industry, but in the yoga industry, it's unheard of.
Yeah.
And another like thing that really gets me I mean, this might be a rant.
I love your rants. I'll cut it if I have
was gonna say. but I think a huge reason why is because it's a female-dominated industry.
Yeah.
Look at all the big yoga, the corporations that have made it, they're run by men, and it drives me insane. Like the founder of Core Power, man. And, the founder of Lululemon, it's a man. The founder of all of these like really big companies, they're men, and trust me, they're making a pretty penny, and they're not apologizing about it. And then what you have on the, as you trickle down is these teachers who are actually the ones creating the product, actually the ones living the yoga, actually the ones creating the experience, and they're making next to nothing. The yoga industry gets hit twice. One is that they psychologically manipulate you into thinking if you're a yogi, you can't value yourself monetarily. So you shouldn't ask for money. You shouldn't, stand for your value.
I find that so much. I even felt that. I mean, I still feel that. I think as yogis, I've said this before, is like we've taken this like vow of poverty in a past life. Mm-hmm. Like my teacher says that, and it's sort of up to us, I believe anyway, is like finding your value. And like money is energy, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a transfer of energy. And as a yoga teacher, you are bringing your energy, you're giving everything, you're holding space for like so many people every day. And money is just like energy in return, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a balance. And like when you start to feel an imbalance, that's when like resentment happens and burnout happens and like all of this stuff. So it's one thing that when a client comes to me too, a lot of them are yogis. I teach the business of yoga. There's like this horrible sort of feeling of like, I'm not worth it, or I shouldn't be charging that, or seva, or this and that. And of course, seva and karma yoga, super important pieces of yoga, but also if you decide to make yoga your living mm-hmm. and your career, then there's a business responsibility mm-hmm. that comes with it. You need to do it with integrity and heart and authenticity, but also you need to make money or it's not a business.
Yeah. And there's nothing to apologize about that.
No, know your value.
Right. Like, and it's, and then the other end is because a lot of times women don't take the time to recognize, the sense of urgency around needing money. Like, why can we not recognize that these women need to be self-sufficient? Just because, they're a yoga teacher, so on and so forth, doesn't mean they can't have a valuable career path. Doesn't mean they don't have another part of their brain that they want to use, aside from teaching. And
I love that. And it's so cool at Ritual because that's what you do. Mm-hmm. So, and I want to talk a little bit about too, like what happened when you started looking for funding for this business. But one thing that she does do at Ritual is her teachers are full-time, of course, and they're not teaching 40 hours of yoga a week. That would be ridiculous to ask anybody to do. So they'll teach a couple nights a week. They'll assist a couple nights a week. And then they have a pillar or they have a space within the business where they're helping to grow it. Mm-hmm. So not only do they have the yoga teaching and they get paid to make their playlists and their classes, she also every year, do you still do this? Yeah. Every year that somebody's with Ritual Hot Yoga, she pays for them to go and advance their training. So not only is she supporting their yoga training and their yoga growth, but also helping them understand like the business side mm-hmm. and the business element. And as you scale and as you grow, these teachers that you're training now will then go out and help open the new studios and more and more and mm-hmm. more. And it seems to be working really well. So now you're here. Now you're like, okay, I'm pissed. Mm-hmm. Which is always kind of a fiery place to be. Every time I'm like really pissed, really heartbroken is actually when I get the most done. Mm-hmm. So you started getting asking for funding. You put together the business model.
Yep. Put together the business model and started pitching to investors. Once again, all men. Started pitching and they, of course, loved the front end of the business model. This is fantastic. Yep. You've definitely, carved out your niche. You're going to make it like in that regard. We believe in it. But why the hell would you pay people this much when you could pay them for a fraction of the cost? And you're crazy. Why would you pay them during training when that's typically in the yoga industry, one of the biggest revenue streams that a yoga studio has? And, many of them, oh yeah, this would be great. Just ditch the teacher model. this would be fine. But the teacher model, it's never going to work. And we pitched to people who had experience with yoga studios and a lot of people who had experience just in the fitness industry, which if you look at the fitness industry, it's a lot of the same thing. Personal trainers, Pilates teachers, you name it. They're probably an independent contractor. They're probably going through the same thing. So they just could not wrap their head around, why would you choose to do this when you don't have to, and you could make so much more money if you just cut it completely. So we ended up opening with no money, actually with zero funding, zero bank loans, in a tiny gym in San Francisco that had an open yoga room that they were only using, a couple hours a day. And so we did a pay per head rental model.
But you transformed that room.
Oh, within 2 weeks, we had our first sold out class.
Oh, yeah. Well, Clay, what's so funny is my partner and husband was one of those first students. And so it's kind of fun that he's still here and believes in it. And now he's, making a lot of bigger decisions on the back end and how to grow this thing when he saw it from the very first iteration in that yoga room to now, we've got 2 rooms at one location, open, packed. I mean, they're offering how many classes a day?
7 to 10.
7 to 10 per studio per day in 3 locations. So how is that?
It is different, but the same in an interesting way. It still feels the same. I know myself well enough to know I am always going to have 6 things on my plate when I can only fit 5. And so it still always feels a little overwhelming. I'm always a little bit overextended. And I think that's kind of, in a weird way, what keeps me coming back and being so committed to the practice of yoga is because to keep my sanity for how hard I'm pushing myself, I have to practice. Someone once asked me, do you think you're more on the business side of things or the yoga side of things? And I was like, how could you answer that? It's like, is the sky blue or does it have air? It's like, it's both the exact same time.
That's so funny because I feel the same way about my business. Like being an entrepreneur is like the most spiritual experience for me. Like it is yoga. Like I am living like yoga off the mat, on the mat. Like it's all in the same. And I've never heard anyone else answer it that way. But I want to just pause for a moment because I know you and I are like really similar in this. We're always thinking of the growth and the next steps and all that. Like, how does it feel now? Like we've got franchising on the horizon and we're looking at multiple cities, studios, locations from where you were just at 3 years ago to now. Like we've got hundreds of people through those doors every week, hundreds a day coming in, practicing, breathing to the beat. So, I mean, wow. Like, how does it feel?
It feels calm, good, a little overwhelming all at the same time. It's every day is so different. It feels like what I can say is there are some days that are so shitty, like so random, the back end stuff that you have to deal with. But there's never really a night where I can go to bed and I do get so emotional.
I knew you were going to cry.
But there's never a night where I can. So lame. I'm so lame.
Lindsey's crying.
I'm so lame.
I love
so basic.
You're not. I love that you cry when you talk about that.
But it's like no matter how shitty my days are, when I go to bed, I can always feel that sense of like mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Yeah. Well, you have. You've accomplished a lot. A few questions that we got were, one, who are your biggest inspirations in all of this? So who have your biggest inspirations been, since there's no one else really doing this?
Right. Yeah, that is actually a good question because it is really tough to find a true mentor in this type of business that I want to build. So the first 2 people that I can think of are my parents. My mom is she's just a badass. Like there's no victims, Also, she would say there's no judgment in this family. She was very stern when we were growing up, very positive in a slightly aggressive way.
That reminds me of someone I know.
Yes, exactly. And so and it was my mom and my three sisters most of the time growing up. And we were always so tight too. Like you were in the family and we had each other's backs. There was no question about that. And so I think that has really influenced me in the way I lead, in the way our culture is in the studio. Like if you're on the ritual team, we got your back, ride or die, like no matter what. And then my dad has been a huge inspiration as well. He, was businessman, very entrepreneurial, very successful. He, worked with a startup that, IPO'd, and he then worked with a lot of small businesses. And he was so subtle but confident in the way he coached me. And that really helped me to see things clearly, to stay high level, to not get too caught up in the weeds, and just focus on what we were here to do. I remember one of my favorite things was when we got evicted.
Right. There's been a lot of drama too over the years coming with 3 studios, right? One example is getting evicted.
Yeah. We got evicted from our first yoga space because, long story short, we got evicted, got a week's notice. It ended up being there was an illegal drug operation going on upstairs.
I forgot about that.
And so our whole yoga studio turned into a crime scene.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And we couldn't go back into the studio because they were growing pot upstairs, and when they turned off the ventilation, all of the fumes sank into our yoga studio. And so you would get like high the moment you walked in. So it was a crime scene, too toxic, quote unquote toxic, to enter. And anyway, I was so upset, we're going to lose all this money because our landlord, the guy who we had paid our deposit to, went to jail. And so we couldn't get any of our money back. And I was like, but Dad, like, we got to take him to court. We got to go. We got to fight this. Like, I want my money back. Like, this is ridiculous. And he's like, let it go. And I was like, what? It's like, let it go. You got to move on. I'm like, Dad, that's like tens of thousands of dollars that they owe us. He's like, focus on your business and move on. And it was like just such a moment for me where I was like, okay, holy shit, there are going to be so many roadblocks that come up where I want to be vindictive. It wasn't even vindictive. I mean, the guy probably should have given us our deposit back, considering all the things, but
maybe like righteous.
Yeah. Like, trying to be the one to like prove everything and make sure everybody was meeting, like doing their part. And he's like, focus on yourself, grow your business, do your thing.
I love listening to the story of you talking about your parents, because now after 3 years of working with you and knowing you, I can like see on a business level and on a personal level, like exactly how that is like manifested in you. Mm-hmm. So talking about our friendship for a second, we've had sort of like an interesting journey, I would call it. But there's a moment that happened with Lindsey that sort of solidified it for me. And what's so funny is it sort of like encapsulates that I've got your back, but let it go attitude. And what happened was I had been working for Ritual full time, and there was another project that sort of came about that I wanted to pursue. And I told Lindsey, hey, I'm going to go pursue this project. Like I'm going to leave, like I'm going to quit Ritual. And without going into any details, she could have had a lot of opinions about this project. She could have been very angry with me. And instead, she basically, I'll never forget it. You called me and you said, I don't care where in the world you are or who you're working with. Mm-hmm. You always have a job here and you can always call me. And that level of like, I've got your back, but also like I'm detached enough to like let you go. It's the most, and I know it's Garrett, your partner's favorite thing about you too, is just this ability to like see somebody you love walking towards fire and just let them go. And that's something that I have such a hard time with. Like, if it's somebody I care about as much as we care about each other, like I wouldn't have been able to like not say something. And of course, the project was a terrible idea. And 3 months later, I come groveling back to Lindsey. One beautiful thing that happened in that is authentic audience ended up being birthed from this whole experience. People have asked, how do you get so close with your clients? Especially, you spend so much time with Lindsey and Garrett, and we're really good friends. But I think yesterday, or was it the day before, is kind of a perfect example. So we both love our businesses. Clay and Lindsey are more similar, and me and Garrett, Lindsey's partner, are more similar. So Clay and Lindsey want to like look at numbers and spreadsheets and data, and Garrett and I want to like take pictures and be creative and write content. And so it works really well. And the other night, you and Clay were still working, and I like walk out of the room and I hear Lindsey like, well, our front end offer on Google AdWords in 2017, like conversion rate. And I just like step out of the room, like, and Clay's like right there with you. So one, we have a really good dynamic, the four of us. And two, I think we work really hard, but for whatever reason, we're really good at like setting the work hat aside and having fun. Like, you're my favorite to work with, but also one of my favorite people to go out with and just have a good time with. And so
we both like whiskey.
We do both like whiskey. But the other piece of that too is I know that no matter how close we become, we still have businesses to run, and your business is your life and baby, and so is mine. And I know without a doubt that if we stopped hitting our numbers and stopped delivering you results, we would get fired. Like, it doesn't matter how close, like there is such a clear, like, oh, I'm going to slack off because she's my friend. If anything, I work harder because we're so close and because I'm so invested in your success. But there's not a moment that I don't know, like, that this is business.
Well, and I think the feeling's mutual, like I respect your guys' business so much. And I know, like, if we can't value you in the way you need to be valued, give you guys the resources that you need to do your job, if we can't deliver on what we're supposed to be delivering, like you do so much of this work, with the marketing, with advertising on the back end. And I know, like, we have to meet you. Like, we can't just be passive. And if we can't, like I said, respect that fact and also be in there with you guys, like looking at the numbers and also having a second set of eyes, then you guys deserve a different client who you can actually work with and can actually achieve what you want to achieve, which is to work with businesses that are elevating. Because the last thing you need is to have a company sitting on your platform that's not,
successful.
Yes. Yeah. Right. As Clay would say, Krista, that's not a good ROI. Like,
well, it's not a good reflection of us, right? Because I care so much about our reputation. And I love that you bring that up, because one thing that I do say to all my clients is like, you've got to meet me there, right? Like, I can do all of this work on my end, but even if you're like Lindsey, Ritual Hot Yoga is not in our program, they're one of our agency clients. And even in that capacity, like, you've got to meet us there. Like, we come in and we're your partners. We're not going to like run your business from your marketing. Like, your brand at the end of the day, your operations. And so the more you can sort of meet us and show up, and Lindsey gets in there and looks at the numbers, and Clay loves it. And it's such a challenging thing to be able to grow this way. You're helping us grow our business. We're helping you grow your business. And in the meantime, we've become really good friends. We're in the Bahamas working nonstop and playing poker at night. Like, it's just, as much as we care, I think it is really important. And one thing you and Garrett are really good at is playing. And like yesterday we played and we went on a boat ride and I took the day, and I asked you on the way home, like, do you feel guilty or like nervous about not checking your emails? And you were like, no, not really. Like, I'm okay. And that almost allowed me to be okay. Because I was like, okay, well, Lindsey runs a business. And if she's like not stressed out about being away from work, I don't have to be stressed out, because you really work harder than anyone I know, but you also play harder than anyone I know. So it's a balance.
Yeah.
It's a balance, and it's so cool. And I just want to like congratulate you on this, what you've been able to create, how you inspire. I know your team is super inspired by you, also challenged by you. You inspire me, you challenge me on a daily basis. So thank you. And I just wanted to sort of end this with a question that, was this your idea, where you said, what's the most inauthentic thing? Was that your idea? So I was asking Lindsey for the podcast, like, I want to end with every single podcast with 2 questions. And she was like, well, what was the most inauthentic moment in your business, and what was the most authentic moment? So let's start with the most inauthentic moment, or a moment maybe you made a decision out of ego, or it was a mistake, you made it. What happened?
It's so funny when I've been thinking, after I said that to you, I was like, fuck, that means I'm going to have to answer it. So I have a couple answers, but I have one. And then if we don't like it, we can talk about other ones. But anyway, the one I can remember where it was a really big moment that my gut was like, Lindsey, this is not right. And I can only compare it to moments I had in my first marriage, which is also that just came to me right now. But anyway, I was like, oh yeah, this is not right. So I remember when we were first starting Ritual, and this has been my baby, my passion, my idea, my dream, my everything that was inside of me. And I remember when I was first starting, and there was other people involved, and I like to please people. A lot of people are people pleasers. And I remember finding myself giving away so much of myself, not only emotionally, but letting other people
financially,
like contractually, I really gave away so much of the business, of me, because it was me, it was my idea, it was my baby. But because I was caught up in this really weird stage of life and just looking to people please. And I remember there was a moment where I was sitting down and someone said to me, something seems really off. Like, are you sure you're okay? And it should have been one of the most exciting times in my life, because it was about to all start. And I knew I was building a house on an insolid foundation. And I was terrified. And it was a little too late. And I knew I was digging myself into this black hole, and I couldn't stop. It was starting to snowball. And it was a huge moment of inauthenticity where I could have stopped it before it started. But instead, I just kind of went with it and have been cleaning it up for 3 years.
Yeah.
And that has been the biggest. A lot of people say they don't have regrets and yada, yada, and all that bullshit. I regret that.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have changed.
Do you think it's affected now, like how you sign contracts, and when you have investors interested in stock options and ownership options in your company? Like, if you didn't have that experience giving away part of your company and realizing that it was a mistake and, if you hadn't done that, do you think you would be as like aware of it now,
Yeah, that's definitely the beautiful thing that came out of it. Is I get now why they say, like, we would pitch and they would be like, okay, who's in charge? And it was always a soft answer. And, they say like, there's one person. Anyway, now I understand all of that. And I realize it's why the business models are the way they are. So yeah, it's definitely informed me now, but it was a tough pill to swallow. And I can distinctly remember that conversation of when someone called me out, and I knew exactly what was wrong.
And you couldn't say it.
And I just couldn't say it.
Yeah. So with that being said, let's sort of finish with maybe one of the most authentic moments or experiences that you've had, and like how that sort of came about.
Yeah. I think the most authentic moments anytime we bring on a new teacher, not going to get emotional.
We're crying again over here.
But that is definitely, those moments are huge. I remember, I don't know why, but Sophie, one of our manager now, I remember like her when she did her audition and like, just like, I was like, okay, yeah, here's your offer. And she, got all teary eyed, and it was just a moment of like, holy shit. Okay. Yes. Like, this is why we do it. Anytime a teacher can go to the doctor, that's why we do it. Anytime, a teacher can take a vacation, it's like those moments where maybe I have to put a little bit more money into the business to cover an unexpected, mirror breakage or eviction. Like those moments where I have to sacrifice a little bit more, but knowing that it's because the people on the other end are going to get to experience a life that they can live for doing and pursuing a career that they want to pursue, those are probably my most authentic moments, when it stings and I make the wire transfer and I'm like, okay, we'll eat this cost.
If it means Ritual surviving another month or another year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I love this conversation. I'm so excited that you are my first guest. And I think we are closer to an hour than 30 minutes. But I think a lot of people that I'm connected with, and of course that you're connected with, are in the yoga industry in some way. So this will be hopefully inspiring and helpful, like for what I wanted to interview Lindsey about mostly, and why is because she's been able to grow this brand in such a short amount of time. And it hasn't been easy. Like, you just heard a few stories, like lawsuits, evictions. Like, it's not all glamorous, and either is my business. And people are like, oh, that's so great. Like, you're on your own business. But what it really means is, we work nonstop, and every moment I'm not working, I feel guilty. And I've learned a lot from you, and just how to let go of things and not be so attached to things. And I do feel like you really bring the yoga philosophy into your business. Ritual has been created in a meaningful way. And like, yoga businesses deserve to be successful. And especially if it's done authentically and like with heart, and you're trying to raise the vibration. And so people have said, like, Lindsey's revolutionizing the yoga industry. And I believe that so much. And I'm so grateful to be a part of it. So with that said, I think we have a little bit more work to do, and hopefully then we can play.
Yes. Yes.
But thank you so much.
Yes.
For coming on. And again, like I said, we'll be offering a complimentary class to everybody who wants one. So DM me, message me, email me, for that promo code, because we haven't made it yet. I decided on the fly that we were going to do that. And Lindsey was like, okay, sure.
Just make it authentic audience.
Authentic audience.
Done.
Great. Okay. So use promo code authentic audience for a free drop in at any of the Ritual locations. And until next time, thank you for tuning in. Keep growing.